Now,
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
Well, let's just start out by saying Julie Gunlock is right pretty much about everything. And that I think that'll solve a lot of our headaches this morning, Julie.
It's going to be a good day.
Yeah, it will be. Good morning. It's Wednesday, and we're raring to go here on O'Connor and Company. Coming up at 6:35, it's Cal Thomas. 7:05, Tom Fitton. 7:35, Superintendent of Spotsylvania County Public Schools, Mark Taylor. No, none of the left likes him. All the liberals don't like him. So you know what that means?
Him.
Yes, we love him. He should be America's superintendent. Then at 8:05, Hans von Spakovsky. You know, it's so funny. Just I didn't know what to tease. You know, every day we do a teaser for the show that we play throughout the course of the day, like going into Chris's show or Vince Cohen's show. You'll hear me say Wednesday on O'Connor, right? And I didn't have anything really specific, so I said it was a joke. I had a joke. I said Wednesday we'll have Corinne Jean-Pierre try to pronounce Hans von Spakovsky because she couldn't pronounce.
Boy, that would be great.
Maisie Hirano, and now here we've got Hans von Spakovsky. Yes. See, it's like my wish came true.
Yes, there you go.
Oh, and then at 8:35, Tom Bevan, Real Clear Politics. All right, I'm Larry O'Connor. That's Julie Gunlock, and we're off and rolling.
We are.
Finally.
Good morning.
Longest guest tease ever. I mentioned coming up at 7:35, we're going to speak with Mark Taylor. He's the superintendent of schools in Spotsylvania County, and there's a couple of reasons why we're going to do that coming up because things are going well in Spotsylvania. In fact, we want to talk about all of the things that Superintendent Taylor is doing right now so you know why he's going to be joining us. And you need to understand that as dire as things look in Fairfax County, certainly, in Alexandria, where you are, Julie, in Loudoun County, of course, and even in Montgomery County, Prince George, wherever you're living right now, Frederick, God knows the school board there, you win a couple of elections, you get yourself a majority, and you can change things rapidly because you get that new majority of school board members on and you got their votes, and then they hire a superintendent that actually focuses on the things that parents care about and not the things that the CRT Ibram X Kendi cares about.
There's an awful lot of parents who just want them to listen without a smug look on their face,
let alone actually caring about
and their
policy.
little timer. Your time is done. Your time is done.
Yes. And how quickly can things change? So let's focus on Spotsylvania right now. County School Board just voted to approve. I love how Channel 9 does this. A controversial policy. Why is
porn in schools isn't controversial?
No, not at all.
No,
letting boys into the girls' locker room
totally
isn't
fine.
controversial.
Yeah.
But
Covering up a rape. Yeah.
This is controversial. Yeah. Why is that needed? This is journalism.
I love the modifiers.
Why is that necessary? Spotsylvania County School Board voted to approve a controversial policy for transgender students on Monday. By the way, it's not a policy for transgender students. It's a policy for all the students. Yeah, and it's a policy for the parents, and it's a policy for the taxpayers, and it's a policy to protect students and their privacy.
How about this? Spotsylvania voted to approve a policy that would harm girls. Okay, there you go. Right.
This follows new guidelines issued by the Virginia Department of Education. In other words, the guidance that we got from the Department of Education, thanks to the leadership of Glenn Youngkin, adhering to his promise to let parents have a say and have, as a result,
and that's all it does.
About a year-and-a-half process, really.
Yeah.
They listened to parents and the appointees, political appointees. I know you all. Then this brings us back to the presidential election because it's, I know, but Trump's tweets and all that stuff. Okay, fine. Even if you like Biden for some reason better than Trump, it's the people they put in place, the appointments, the Secretary of Transportation, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of Education. And it's the same thing in Youngkin's case, where Youngkin's great, very happy with him. You know who's even better? All the people he's appointed, all the people who are actually carrying out his policy and coming to the table and doing the hard work. And
there's a phrase, personnel is policy.
Yeah.
And that phrase is, and for those who don't sort of know this sort of inside the beltway phrase, it is, look, policy is often accomplished. The policy goals that you want is accomplished by putting good people in place. This was a problem for Trump because he, put some troubled folks.
Well, if you ask the Trump campaign, it's because he listened to the wrong people and he took bad advice. And I think in many cases that's the case.
He was at a disadvantage from the beginning. But
it's a good example. And it brings us back to Virginia, where we've got our new guidelines. We've got the new model policies. We have already heard from Fairfax a lot. We're going to ignore that. Screw that. This, of course, comes 2 years after they claimed that they would have loved to, take masks off the kids, but we've got to follow the policies of Northam, right?
That's right.
But now, of course, they only follow the policies they agree with. But in Spotsylvania, they have now become the first major school board to pass these guidelines, and this model policy into their local statutes. School board voted 4-2 in favor of a policy ensuring privacy, dignity, and respect for all students. By the way, that's the name of the policy. The policy is called Ensuring Privacy, Dignity, and Respect for All Students. Channel 9 considers that controversial. This was passed Monday evening. Policy says, and here's what's controversial, all right? Now Channel 9 finally gets to actually detail. I don't know why I'm beating up on Channel 9 today. Here's how they now finally describe. Some intern wrote this, I apologize.
No, GChat or AI.
Yeah, ChatGPT. Exactly. This is AI generated.
Yeah.
The policy says, get ready for controversy. Students will be referred to by the names in their school record.
The nerve.
With pronouns according to the sex assigned at birth.
Can you imagine?
You mean the biological sex they were born with, assigned at birth. Why are they adopting this language?
God.
And a parent or guardian can issue written instructions otherwise. So in other words, parents can say, listen, I know that the record says that her name is Jessica, but we want you to call her Stan. And then fine, teachers will call them, but due to the parent's direction, not because the student behind their parent's back says so.
Goes on. The policy also said that participation in sports will be determined by sex and not by gender or gender identity, which is, again, I thought just a couple years ago, all these schools used to go safety first.
Right.
Okay, it is. There are injuries that young girls are experiencing now are being, because they have to compete with much larger biological males in their same sport. So this is a safety issue, but that's not controversial.
Not to mention the fact that when they change into their bathing suits or their running outfits or their softball uniforms or get in the shower after practice, they don't want to be exposed to a naked male genitalia against their consent.
Which we know from Riley Gaines and from other of these young women who bravely come forward. They are exposed to male genitalia in the locker room.
And I know this is a weird thing, but in many cases, in fact, I saw numbers that suggested it's almost 50-50. The young biological men who are now identifying as women, they're still attracted to women. Mm-hmm. That's about half of them. I know we all assume, they must be gay. They must be attracted to men if they want to dress up like women. That's actually not the case.
And it's not the case in the Wyoming sorority, where this sorority has been forced to bring in a male-bodied, and he is definitely still aroused by women.
So is Leah Thomas, by the way,
absolutely.
The swimmer in Pennsylvania, and so is Dylan Mulvaney, we've learned.
Yes.
Who I would have guessed otherwise, but
wait, must have been news when I was on vacation.
Don't you remember Dylan Mulvaney put that video? No, it was like a month and a half ago where Dylan Mulvaney, I can see myself getting married if I find the right woman.
Really? No.
Dylan Mulvaney
Plot
actually
twist.
told that to, I'll find the video for you. Yeah,
Yes.
I know. You need a scorecard.
I need a
So anyway, that's the policy in Spotsylvania that has now been approved by that school board 4-2, and how quickly things can change. Imagine, this is why we keep saying school boards are where you can actually see your actions and your activism pay off. Because first of all, you need way fewer votes to win a school board race than you need to win, the presidency. And all you need to do is flip maybe 1 or 2 seats on your current school board, and boom, you're done. You've got your majority, and now you can get stuff done. So we're going to focus a little bit more on, because there's other things going on in Spotsylvania that you've got to see, and this is a lesson for all of us. But first, it's 5:15.
The new WMAL app has arrived. Download it today and listen anywhere in the world.
So this policy puts a lot of power in the hands of parents here. It passed 4-2 with one council member choosing not to vote late last night. So here's what this means for students who identify as transgender. This new policy is following the, quote, Privacy, dignity, and respect for all students guidelines the Virginia Department of Education put out back in July. Governor Youngkin calling these, quote, model policies.
How do you not quote model
Quote
policies?
I know.
Isn't that a standard thing? It's a model policy.
Yeah.
What's the deal with the person who chose not to vote, though, and just abstain?
Now, the council member who chose not to vote said she had some concerns about abusive parents and what would happen if the school system outed a student and the child was harmed because of that.
If only school systems, and for that matter, state law, had some sort of parameters with regard to abusive parents.
Yeah, it's already illegal to harm your child for
and again,
this reason.
The assumption is that parents are hateful bigots who are going to hurt their children, and that's why we need to step in. But you know what? I'm so infuriated by somebody who has that opinion and then says, therefore, I shall abstain. No.
Yeah.
Sorry, honey.
Yeah.
Put your name on it.
Right.
Go ahead and vote if that's what you think.
Yeah, you're right. I love this idea. I'm so concerned for the safety and welfare of children, so I'm going to abstain.
Right. Exactly. That's why I wanted to be on the school board.
LGBTQ plus advocates have sharply criticized these policies here, calling them dangerous, politically motivated, and singling out transgender youth.
Okay. Well, doesn't the other policy single out transgender youth by granting them permissions and rights and abilities that no other student can have?
Yeah.
And by the way, now that you've heard, everybody's concern and everyone's reaction, let's have Channel 9 actually describe what's happening.
So let's get into this here. Under these rules, students will be referred to by the names on their record and the pronouns associated to their biological sex, unless a parent gives written permission saying otherwise. All right, 2, kids will only play in sports based on their biological sex, not by gender identity. The same goes for bathrooms, unless parents choose to opt their kids out and prefer them to be given access to a single-use stall for safety concerns here. Students also not allowed to wear gender-neutral clothing.
So that's what everybody's upset about.
Or
actually, not everybody.
I think
most people are just fine with this.
I think it's worth reminding folks that these policies, which allowed transgender students to walk into any bathroom they want, to change their names, to play on sports, just happened a couple years ago under Northam, who was under incredible political pressure because, his, white hood and blackface photos came out.
Right. So he bent over backwards to do whatever he could to accommodate those who were protecting his political future.
We're as far left as you can go. Officials were put in place at the Department of Education, and they put in place these policies that are so radical. So it's important for people to remember what the governor is doing is walking back very brand new policies that were just instituted a couple years ago.
Yeah, I like to say a minute and a half ago, we all agreed that boys shouldn't go in the girls' room. It was like a minute and a half ago in our lives.
Right.
Yeah.
And now everyone's like, oh, this is so controversial.
Right.
There was, of course, no language like that
when
Northam implemented.
That's right. And there was no coverage like this.
No,
all
it's
of
very
it just
quietly,
happened quietly, and parents suddenly woke up and said, what the hell has happened
and
here?
it was all part of this sort of COVID thing that we all realized what a disaster everything was. So we should all really thank the current governor.
And we'll be able at 7:35 to thank the superintendent, Mark Taylor. In a moment, I want to remind you who Mark Taylor is. Why they always call him controversial, too,
yes.
because of his beliefs. And also one other development in Spotsylvania, this one involving story time, reading children's books. It's not a drag queen. It's going to be Kirk Cameron. We'll give you those details in a moment. It's 5:21.
Spotsylvania County Public School Board members are set to vote on accepting a large book donation that's been controversial nationwide.
Controversial again. Okay, these are books coming from Brave Books. That's the same group that publishes Kirk Cameron's storybooks and other storybooks that, have a message that isn't your typical Jenny has two moms kind of storyline, which has already been put into our school systems for the last 20 years. That's not controversial, of course. What are these books about?
Some of the books include Paws Off My Cannon, Frame Blame, and The Raft of Shame, and Elephants Are Not Birds. On its website, Brave Books says it teaches elementary students the importance of the Second Amendment and that, quote, girls are not boys and elephants are not birds.
Well, that That is pretty controversial. So, in other words, it's a science book.
Right.
Yeah.
Trust the science, folks.
Well, school board is going to be voting on that as well to accept this donation from Brave Books. And coming up at 7:35, we'll talk to the superintendent, Mark Taylor, about
Can't
it.
wait.
But, again, we're having fun with the media and how they cover this stuff and using the term controversial and all that.
Yeah.
But that's fine. That's what they'll do. We're keeping our eye on a prize. And good job, parents, getting the school board in there. And good job actually following through.
I will also say, look, we need to support this superintendent. People in Spotsylvania need to vocally, verbally, loudly support what this superintendent, because I love conservatives, but we're always like we see a policy go through that we agree with, and we're like, that's great.
Oh, good.
Quietly.
Let's move on now.
Because I have things to do, right? But no, we need to support this superintendent. Parents in the district need to support this superintendent. This is brave what he's doing, and sadly, I hate to use the word controversial, but today things have become so controversial. So this is a great pro-family policy, and he should be praised.
From Dr. Mark Taylor,
That's
the superintendent of schools in Spotsylvania, who joins us at 7:35. And who knows, maybe are you talking about our next Secretary of Education? Is that who you're talking about? Yes,
and I'm also moving to Spotsylvania.
All right, coming up, as we see the events unfold with the Justice Department, who gets charged and who doesn't in this town. We had a dire warning last night from none other than Newt Gingrich. I want you to hear it next. It's 5:36. It's O'Connor and Company, or as we like to call it, Cooking with Larry and Julie. We've been threatening to do a cooking show, the two of us, but I don't.
That's right.
It's hard to do an audio cooking podcast thing, right?
I don't know. I mean, look,
without the visuals, without video.
I mean, NPR did it for years, or even SNL made fun of them.
I guess that's true. All right. Julie and I are going to do a cooking podcast.
There you go. That's what we talk about during the break.
Thinking Copair could sponsor that. That's all of our recipes. All right, so that's coming up in the future. In the meantime, coming up later in the program at 6:35, Cal Thomas, 7:05, Tom Fitton, 7:35, as we mentioned, Superintendent Mark Taylor, 8:05, Hans von Spakovsky, and 8:35, Tom Bevan. There's a whole lot going on there, politics-wise, legal-wise, corruption-wise, and we got you covered. 6 ways to Sunday, as Chuck Schumer would say. All right, so turning back into the national scene, listen, there's really no huge developments in the indictments of Donald Trump and the lack of indictments of anyone in the Biden family or anyone with a D at the end of their name. We played for you yesterday, of all people, Rachel Maddow has on MSNBC to comment on the election denial indictments. She had Hillary Clinton on. The lack of self-awareness over there. Oh, my gosh. And Hillary Clinton's like, well, it's good that we're finally getting to the bottom of it. Because when you just don't accept the results of an election, that will forever harm a democracy.
But after cackling for a full half an hour, right in her classic Hillary cackle way, she then goes, but ultimately I'm sad for the Republic.
Yes.
So gross.
So with that and the increasing concern that so many of us have that the Justice Department and justice in general at the federal level certainly is not being meted out in a fair and equitable way, and justice is in fact not blind, and somebody's got a thumb on those famous scales that Lady Justice holds in front of the DOJ building. Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House, and now sort of an old sage at this point in this town, the wise man on the hills, who sort of looks down at what's going on from a 30,000-foot level and gives his assessment. He said something yesterday on Fox News Channel, which sort of caught my ear, that I wanted you all to hear, because I think that it's spot on and it's deeply disconcerting as well.
That it is Barack Obama who corrupts the Justice Department. It is Hillary Clinton who routinely breaks the law and gets away with it. And now we have Joe Biden, who's learned. He's learned from Obama that doesn't matter what you do, if you're a liberal Democrat, you will not be prosecuted. He learned from Hillary that a person in high public office can get millions and millions of dollars. And they learned from watching Donald Trump that a true outsider willing to take on the entire system could destroy their entire machine. So what you're seeing across the country is a desperate last-ditch effort by a corrupt machine to destroy their most dangerous opponent in a way which not only breaks the Constitution, destroys the rule of law, and establishes a moment of bitterness which I think will last for a generation or more. I think this is going to be a horrendous period, and we just need to understand the people who want to control America and dictate to the rest of us will break any law, lie about any topic, and manipulate the system any way they can, and that includes a lot of the elite news media.
I don't see anything that I disagree with there, sadly. I don't like getting into the whole, evil forces who are trying to control our lives kind of conversation. But when you see the events unfold the way they have unfolded, and you see the Justice Department with their cynical and transparent move to not actually appoint a special counsel who will sort out the crimes and find justice, but instead cover up what has been going wrong with the investigation into the Bidens. And then you see the corrupt news media, as Newt Gingrich calls them, cover that story as if, oh, well, here comes David Weiss and Merrick Garland on their white horses coming in and handling all of this. Or even worse, I don't even know why we need a special counsel. There doesn't seem that what was I think it was Dana Bash who said, at some point, poor Hunter Biden has been under investigation for 5 years now. Yeah. He's the victim in all of this,
son, yes.
Right. And so and it's like, I find it hard to disagree with anything. And by the way, for all of those, especially the never Trumpers or the Republicans who may like Donald Trump's policies, but they just don't understand why anyone can vote for him given all these indictments. What you just heard from Newt Gingrich, that's why. That's how people are even more emboldened to put him in there, because we are so ticked off. I remember the day after the 2016 election when Hillary Clinton was defeated by Donald Trump.
When everyone in my neighborhood was drunk. Right?
Yes, yeah. I came on the radio the next day and say, now do you believe how angry we are?
Yeah.
Now do you get it? And now we're just even that much angrier.
It's really interesting also what Gingrich says about just the media protections or that they're all in it together, right? And it was interesting.
They literally are, because they all many of the prominent journalists in this town used to work for Democrats on Capitol Hill.
It's interesting. David Garros was on Fox News yesterday, and he was talking about how there are regular meetings at Obama's glitzy Colorama house, and how there are regular meetings at that house, and nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about how, there is a group of people who are meeting regularly at Obama's Colorama house and look, the Biden administration is filled with former Obama administration officials. And, he talked about how in days past, they would have staked out that house. They would have seen the New York Times and the Washington Post would have staked out that house and recorded who was going in and out and who was connected to Obama and who was connected to the Biden administration. And they would have had a clear record of that. And he just said, these are not the newspapers of, 20 years ago. They don't care.
You make a really good point. And I want to continue that in just a moment, because Obama looms large in all of this. And there's a point about Obama that seems to be missed by a lot of commentators, but not by us. And we're going to remind you of it coming up in just a moment about Obama's his mere presence in this town, which is
and kept kind of hidden.
That's right. Everybody thinks he's up in Martha's Vineyard
or
in
Hawaii.
Chicago or something. Yeah. So more on that in a moment. 5:43. All right, so let's pick up where you left off there, talking about Barack Obama. You were referring to this book, right? This biography of Obama that it was written in 2017, I think, as Obama was just out of office and didn't get much attention
and this was by an author, David Garros,
who has written a biography about Martin Luther King Jr. And so he's recently been interviewed for Tablet magazine, and huge revelations out this. It's really made the rounds. The biggest revelation is that Barack Obama, in a letter breaking up with his ex-girlfriend, said that he
fantasizes
about having intimate
sexual relations with
men on a daily basis, right? Which that's kind of newsworthy.
I
would think. Andrew Breitbart always used to say the media never vetted this guy. They never vetted this guy. Nobody ever talked to his ex-girlfriend. They could have gotten this information.
Waiting for the transcripts.
So that got all the headlines. Understandable.
Right.
Honestly, obviously. But you just mentioned his Colorama home and the fact that there are these elite parties all the time and gatherings and policy discussions and policy decisions, and a lot of them involve people who are working in the Biden White House. They drive up, Connecticut, take DuPont Circle to Massachusetts, head right to Colorado, take their marching orders from Obama, and then come back to the White House and get the job done, because this is Barack Obama's third term. You're right. You would think that would get a lot of attention, and it's not. But let's just go back a little bit further. Why is he even here? Yeah. It has, I believe Woodrow Wilson was the last president of the United States who stayed in Washington, D.C. after his presidency.
Right.
And that's because he literally had he couldn't talk or walk. He had stroke after stroke after stroke, and he couldn't leave, basically. He stayed. Otherwise, presidents always leave. They get the hell out of town, first of all, because they hate D.C.
Yes.
Secondly, because it's just tradition that you don't want to be looming over the next president.
Right.
And that's just the way. And this was raised when he bought his home. And what was their response? Well, our youngest hasn't graduated high school. Sasha, I think. Sasha was the youngest.
Yeah.
We're waiting for Sasha to graduate Sidwell Friends, and then we'll leave. Well, Sasha graduated 7 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're still here.
This is an article that was fleshed out by Tablet Magazine. You mentioned this, and David Samuels was the author of that. And it's
a must read. It's very long, but it is a must read.
It is so fascinating. In this interview with Garrows, he says this. He asked Garrow. He says, doesn't it strike you as odd? Kind of what you're getting at, Larry. You're saying this is kind of weird. What's he doing here?
He's
right?
literally living 3 miles from the White House.
And David Samuels says to Garrow, he says, I have heard from more than one source there are regular meetings at Obama's house in the D.C. Kalorama neighborhood involving top figures in the current White House with Secret Service and cars outside. I don't write about it because it's not my lane. There are over 1,000 reporters in Washington, and yet there's 0 stakeouts of Obama's mansion. And Garrows later says, well, Washington Post and New York Times aren't the news outlets that they used to be. But the idea that there's folks from the White House going to Obama's mansion, and it's constant. It shows that Obama has, as someone said in this article, he has an oar in. He definitely has an oar in.
Wait a second, are you back to the fantasizing about sex with men part? An oar in, in the...
You got it? Okay.
I get it now.
Dirty
sure.
mind.
Sorry.
Anyway, it is concerning. And again, if you were to bring this stuff up, this is David Samuels and David Garrow talking about this. But if any average person, you're such a conspiracist. Well, when you consider that Obama has mashed potatoes for brains, and you wonder who's in charge, is it Jill? Is
Biden
it Susan
has mashed potatoes?
What did I say? Obama.
You said Obama.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yes. Biden has mashed potato brains.
Everyone says who's really running things.
Yes, maybe.
Looking the Colorado White House. Yeah. Remember, Barack Obama ran as an outsider when he ran for president. He had only been in this city for about 2 years. The problem here is Washington, D.C.
Right.
That's the problem. You got to be like me, from Chicago, and we'll fix things right. He won't leave. Remember the Saturday Night Live sketch, The Thing That Wouldn't Leave? Mm-hmm. And I would love a reporter to just ask him, excuse me, Mr. Obama, why are you still here? Well, why is he still in Washington, D.C.? He's got a home in Martha's Vineyard. He's got a home in Hawaii. He's got a home in Chicago. But he lives here daily, and he's still here. And he said he was only here for his kid to graduate, and he's still here. Why? It's 5:53. Coming up, the big 6 o'clock hour, we're going to talk to Cal Thomas, as we always do on Wednesdays, give you an update on the Ivy Leagues and how they're going to get around the Supreme Court decision on affirmative action. Plus, right here in D.C., Howard University has some things to say about security concerns in crime. Coming up.